Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a reporter for NBC4 and a columnist for the current newspapers. Tom Sherwood, welcome.
Good afternoon. Beautiful day.
Also joining us in studio is Karl Racine. He is the Attorney General for the District of Columbia. Karl Racine, thank you for joining us.
So, Joe and Tom, it's always a great pleasure to be here.
Tom won't be here next Friday because he is going to Cuba.
That's correct.
The President of the United States is tomorrow expected to be meeting with the Cuban President, Raul Castro, and it is my understanding that one of them is going to demand your presence in Cuba.
Well, you know, the president is going, he's my setup team.
He's just setting you up.
Actually, no, I made this. I was going to go last year, but never get around to getting right with the Cuban intersection. And I just couldn't make the arrangement, so I just signed up with the Smithsonian tour group. And we're going to leave next Friday morning and come back about a week later. I'm looking forward to seeing the country before Starbucks and Marriott rediscover it. I'm looking forward. It's an arts and culture tour. I don't want to spend too much time on the politics of the place, but everyone who's been there says it's a very interesting place.
You should know we went there in 2001, then managing producer Diane Vogel and I, and we were able to hire a television crew in Cuba and do work, so you can do that.
I have a new i6 phone, which I just got yesterday. I'm still trying to fit in the palm of my hand properly. I intend to take some pretty cool pictures for NBC4 and
so you're going to work.
Well, a reporter, I'm always working.
You're going to be working, smoking cigars and drinking
I'm not going to smoke any cigars. I've already been warned most of them are counterfeit.
Right, you didn't mention.
But I'm looking for the best possible rum that can fit in my suitcase on the way back.
Okay, can we get back to the business at hand here before Karl Racine walks out of the studio? Before we start talking to you, Mr. Attorney General, there are a few issues that I generally discuss with Tom. Today, one of them is the apparent small or large ruckus caused by Prince George's County Executive Rushern Baker deciding to endorse Congressman Chris Van Hollen for the U.S. Senate position being vacated by Senator Barbara Mikulski. There were questions raised about why he was not supporting Congresswoman Donna Edwards, who hails from Prince George's County, but who is also African Americans, and there were questions raised as to whether we are now politically in a post-racial era, which I find was kind of silly because it suggests that Rushern Baker is obligated to support whatever black candidate happens to be running, and we are hearing that Congressman Elijah Cummings may also be jumping into the race.
Rushern Baker is a smart politician. We're never going to be in a post-racial society. I mean, if those who think we are, wake up. But Donna Edwards is kind of an outsider. You know, when she ran for Congress
against Albert Wynn.
Thank you. I could hear Al, couldn't hear Wynn. You know, she defeated the people who were all for him. He was the incumbent. I think she's doing the same thing this time. Chris Van Hollen has a very strong Democratic record in the state of Maryland, and people, you know, Ike Leggett, who's also African American, runs Montgomery County. He's endorsed Van Hollen.
That's easy for him. Van Hollen is in his county.
Well, yeah, but that's not the when you're talking about a statewide race. You know, it's who's who and where's what. So I think it's, you see here, this is real politics of trying to get the best senator to represent the state of Maryland. Donna Edwards says she would be good for all the reasons you just mentioned, an African American woman, a congresswoman. I think, is it Emily's List that has already suggested support for her? I mean, so she has some the question here in this primary will be who's the most progressive. And I think we're going to have an interesting campaign, but the people who are running the counties want to be certain they have someone that they can work with.
Donna Edwards will say, I've run against the establishment before and won.
That's what it is.
And I'm going to do it.
And Heather
again.
Mazier, who was on our program just a couple of weeks ago, has said she is not running. And I don't know whether Elijah Cummings
has a farm to run. She has other things to do. Heather Mazier does.
So whatever she has to do, she's not going to be running for the Senate.
She's not going to be doing it. Another issue that, because our Attorney General is here, he might want to opine on, because there is a lawsuit involved. The former First Lady of the district, Cora Masters Barry, is suing the woman who donated her kidney to Marion Barry, Kim Dickens, who has started a foundation called the Barry Dickens Kidney Foundation to encourage organ donation. Cora Masters Barry is suing, saying that she cannot use the very name in her foundation, despite the fact that she donated a kidney, despite the fact that she said that the late former mayor was involved in putting together that foundation with her. Not only can she not use the name, but the lawsuit apparently is asking her to round up any promotional materials with the name Barry or the image Barry on them and turn them over so that they can be destroyed.
Well, this is kind of a sad thing because Kim Dickens is widely respected for, in 2008, donating the kidney to Mayor Barry that helped keep him alive in his surgery at the Howard Hospital. However, since that time, there's been no real relationship between the Barry family and Kim Dickens. But Barry himself, according to Dickens and her lawyer, they were telling me this week, I haven't done all the reporting on it, so just keep this in general, that there were letters and that the Mayor Barry did in fact attend a fundraising event or some type of an event to help establish this, and that there is written correspondence from the mayor announcing that this organization would go in place. On the flip side, Cora Masters Barry is the widow. They were separated for a long time, but not divorced. She is trying to corral the rights and responsibilities of the Marion Barry name. She's working on a headstone for him at Congressional Cemetery, how to protect what few assets he had. Mayor Bowser has created a commission on how the city should honor the legacy of Marion Barry. So she's trying to work with that, which is
Masters Barry's on that commission.
So all that is going on, and Kim Dickens is kind of operating out there in her own sphere. And Cora Masters Barry and her lawyer, A. Scott Bowden, say she's operating inappropriately, and that she should cease and desist, and that's what the letters they have sent to her.
But from a technical legal standpoint, Mr. Attorney General, it reminds one of the children of Martin Luther King and all of the efforts they have made that his name not be used without either compensation or permission from them. And while technically they may be on firm legal ground, when people look at situations like that, they say, well, from a moral standpoint, it just doesn't look good.
Well, I'm not going to comment directly on the lawsuit, but you're right. It is reminiscent of the lawsuits surrounding the use of Dr. King's names. And of course, after a while, I think most people got tired of the battles really for money. In this case, I would note that A. Scott Bowden is a terrific lawyer, and while certainly going to pursue the rights aggressively, he knows how to find accommodation where there's accommodation possible.
A. Scott Bowden, who used to be a candidate for office in the district.
I think he learned quite well in that one campaign that just having a well-organized campaign is not quite enough. But this is a sad thing for the Marion Barry the family and the people, and even Kim Dickens. I hope it gets worked out and that we can move forward.
Our guest is Karl Racine. He's the Attorney General for the District of Columbia. If you have questions or comments for Karl Racine, call us at 800-433-8850. You can send email to kojo@wamu.org or send us a tweet at Kojo Show. You can go to our website, kojoshow.org, ask a question, make a comment, or watch the live video stream there right now. You're holding this office is, in a way, uncharted territory for the district. You're the city's first elected Attorney General, but the mayor recently proposed moving the power to review city laws, land deals, and contracts to lawyers on her staff. How do the changes that she is proposing affect what you felt was the job you were signing up for when you ran for this seat?
Well, thank you very much, Kojo, for that question. In fact, the mayor's budget support legislation did, in fact, suggest that those core functions of review of legislation and of land deals, the biggest contracts the city does, should be reviewed by her own lawyers and not the Attorney General. I respectfully disagree with that notion. And frankly, I think that the referendum creating the Attorney General statute is quite clear, as well as the law implementing it in 2014, quite clear. Those functions, the review of legislation and the big land deals, are essential to be reviewed by the Attorney General. It is a critical part of our checks and balances. Checks and balances in government are good things. They are consistent with a mature democracy, a democracy that people can be proud of.
You were elected to be independent? Do you feel that this would compromise your independence? Because what the legislation seems to say is that you would only review these items if requested to do so by the mayor.
Well, I think the mayor's proposed legislation is wrong. I think it's, frankly, I think it's inconsistent with the law, certainly inconsistent with the referendum. And again, the council's law passed in October 14. It would indeed strip the independent elected attorney general of what the people wanted. And they wanted an attorney apart from the mayor who would be honest and provide that essential check and balance that mature democracies require.
To put it clearly, people who support what the referendum said and your position is that the mayor would gut the elected attorney general's office. She's already, as I understand it, rejected your idea that the various attorneys general in each of the agencies, which now report to the mayor, will not go back to your office. So if you account for the fact that the attorneys general in each of the agencies will report to the mayor's directors, and the mayor's office will decide on its own through its office of legal counsel whether or not its projects are legal, you might as well go back to your law office. Why don't you just get, I mean, she is gutting your office. That's what the critics say.
Well, I
Is
think
gut too strong of a word in your polite legal words?
I think that the mayor's proposal would take away core and critical functions from the independent attorney general.
Gut, I think, is the popular word.
What has she told you, if anything, about her motivation?
Right. Have you
to make
talked
these
to her?
changes?
Right. That's a very, yeah. Have you, one-on-one, have you spoken to her?
I should tell you, I have tremendous respect for the mayor. I've supported the mayor in her prior council races and certainly supported her in her most recent run for mayor. We have discussed these issues, and we've discussed them, frankly, in a professional way. Sometimes newspapers and radio shows, not yours, tend to like to create rivalry. The reality is we're having a very important disagreement, a disagreement that I happen to believe I'm on the right side of. I'm on the side of the voters, 76% of whom decided that they wanted an independent elected attorney general. I hope that the mayor, her team, and I are able to work through these problems, even as we're navigating the course through the council.
But they don't see it as a problem. They see, I mean, Mark Toohey, who is her head of the office of the mayor's council, they said, oh, Carl and I, we're good. We'll work this out. The mayor, we'll all get together in the room and work it out. I don't see any working out. I see taking. Whether it's a good idea or a bad idea, I'm not saying, but I'm just saying it looks to me like it's just a matter of taking. I mean, when are you going to sit down with the mayor and, quote, work things out?
Well, I think what's really important here is that what we're talking about is a mayoral proposal to shift responsibilities away from the attorney general. Just because a mayor proposes to do so doesn't make it so. The council has a lot to do with where we end up on these issues. And I'm very confident that the council will respect the will of the people who so clearly wanted the District of Columbia to represent the best governance in this country.
Can I?
The same council who tried to prevent this referendum from going forward
And
in the
then
first
gutted
place.
the lawyers out to the agencies. But again, maybe I missed it because I was looking at my notes and everything else over here. Has the mayor said to you, Mr. Attorney General or Carl, this is what I'm trying to do? And then you said, no, that's not a good idea. She said, I'm going to do it anyway. What has she said directly to you?
Not conversation that you had.
What conversation did you have? Did you meet in a dark hotel room somewhere? Did you meet in a bar? Did you meet in her office?
No. Look,
talk on the phone?
The way that the mayor's office and the attorney general's office communicate is the same way regular people do. Oftentimes by telephone conversation, certainly by emails, and by submissions of proposed legislation. She submitted her proposed legislation. I've submitted alternative legislation. I think that this
so she hasn't even spoken directly to you. As I'm speaking directly to Carl Racine, and you're speaking directly to me.
Let me be clear on that, Tom. I have spoken with the mayor. I spoke with her most recently this morning.
And did she respond?
We have, again, a healthy disagreement, one I think that is consequential to the manner in which democracy is practiced in the District of Columbia. And let me make the point again. I actually have faith in this council, that the council will do the right thing and will recognize that they cannot overturn, disregard, nor disavow the will of 76% of the voters who absolutely wanted an independent attorney general to do independent reviews, yes, of big business deals in this city.
Do have to mention that Mayor Bowser appeared on News Talk on News Channel 8 with Bruce DePoit this morning. She said her suggestions for the shifts in responsibility are not, in fact, a power grab. And over and above that, she said she's helped your office to establish more independence by removing barriers that prevented you from hiring your own chief of staff. Care to comment on that?
Sure. In the context of the transition, of course, we had several conversations about different things concerning exempted employees and my need to be able to bring in lawyers and staff. And she certainly facilitated that, and I thanked her for that. What we're having now is what I believe is the most important discussion around independence, autonomy, and the future, frankly, of voting rights and statehood that this city has ever had. We need to have a District of Columbia that reflects confidence in the different branches of government and separation of powers.
Have you spoken to Ward 5 council member Kenyon McDuffie, who I believe is still chairman of the Judiciary Committee? I think will be overseeing this for the budget reasons. Have you spoken with him? Has he spoken to you?
I have spoken with Kenyon McDuffie, and Kenyon McDuffie has spoken to me.
He hasn't said anything publicly yet.
No, as you know, Kenyon McDuffie is a very serious legislator. He works extremely hard to do not only the business of the people in Ward 5, but also the city's business writ large. Mr. McDuffie is fully up to speed on these issues. I'm confident that Mr. McDuffie is going to be on the side of separation of powers and true checks and balances. And I would note, Tom, regarding Mr. McDuffie not only is working hard on matters of the independent attorney general, but on important issues like juvenile justice. In areas like juvenile justice, I have a partner in Kenyon McDuffie, and we're doing great things.
But Chairman Phil Mendelson has expressed, I don't think he said anything publicly yet, but I'm told by council members he's expressed some concerns. Several council members have, but the question is, by the time we'll have a special election before this decision is decided, we'll have 2 new council members. Many people think the people endorsed by Bowser will win, that she'll have a fairly strong hand on the council. Do you think you'll have 7 votes to protect the independence of the Attorney General's office?
I certainly believe that I'll have 7 votes. I think that the council members who choose to go against the clearly articulated, stated will of 76% of the folks who wanted an independent attorney general office are acting at great risk if they reject what the people clearly wanted.
Would you have even run for this job if the responsibilities that went with it were what Mayor Bowser is trying to organize or propose right now?
That's a fair question. I think the answer is absolutely not. The reality of it is, Kojo,
I'll be tweeting that response.
I left a great job with a great firm in order to join the city government because I was excited by the concept of separation of powers, by the concept of showing all the states and indeed Congress that we know how to run our democratic business here in the District of Columbia. I ran not to be someone, but to do some things like juvenile justice, a focus on consumer protection, and yes, building an independent office of attorney general that has one objective, and that is honest government.
On to the telephones. Put on your headphones, gentlemen, because Joyce in Southeast Washington wants to talk about another matter that the Attorney General has weighed in on. Joyce, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Kojo and Jeff. How are you?
I am well, Joyce, but it's afternoon.
Oh, good afternoon. Okay, I didn't know you on this late. All right, welcome to the city government, Attorney Christine.
Thank you.
Welcome to the D.C. government. That's how we operate. I used to be in D.C. government, so I know what you're going through because that matter has come up year after year about where all those attorneys supposed to be taken out of those agencies and put under one arm. I remember that from long ago.
Yep, but Joyce,
bring them back in and they send them out.
Your concern is another matter today, though.
Yes, Initiative 71. Now, I have an allergy, okay? I'm going to be selfish. are we supposed to smoke marijuana up and down the street? Is that legal?
In public?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
That was
that's what
Kojo
you
responding.
said.
That's not the
I
attorney.
think she was looking for a little more legal.
But even I know that. But go ahead, please,
Yeah.
Mr. Attorney General.
Well, I'm hearing differently.
Please
Okay.
allow the
They
Attorney
want-
General
I'm
to.
hearing,
He will expand on my response.
Sure. Joyce, thank you
Yeah.
very much for your question. And I understand
Thank
that there can be indeed some confusion as to the laws. I would refer you to the OAG website. The mayor's team has a great website, as does Kathy Lanier, where we really try to clarify what is allowed and what is not allowed. And smoking marijuana in public is not permissible. It is, in fact, illegal under Initiative 71.
And thank you very much for your
Just
call.
incidentally, Chief last week told us that 10 people have been arrested since February 26th for smoking in public.
But you can, Joyce, especially dealing with the condition that you have, use it in the privacy of your own home. Correct?
That is
Homegrown and
correct.
home use.
We got a question over Twitter from Tom who says, does the Attorney General think DC can spend contingency reserve funds to regulate marijuana sales?
There's an argument that the team at Appleseed, led by a terrific lawyer, Walter Smith, makes that contingency funds can be used to regulate marijuana. As Attorney General, I have not firmly opined on that issue. And frankly, I think it's a much closer question than where Mr. Smith is. So I'm going to defer on that right now.
Carl Racine is the Attorney General for the District of Columbia. He joins us in studio. If you have questions or comments for him, give us a call at 800-433-8850 or go to our website, kojo.org, the live video stream, and ask a question or make a. Tom Sherwood is a resident analyst. He's a reporter for NBC4 and a columnist for the current newspapers. The Washington Post editorial board wrote this week that while the mayor's office is trying to change your office, you've also been lobbying to use money from court settlements to build a new fraud unit. They characterized it as a flashy new fraud unit. What would you say to those who feel that you're trying to build your office into something that is more in line with your prerogatives rather than what voters asked for when they elected you, when they voted to create this elected position?
Sure, Kojo. As a former Washington Post paper boy, I can tell you it's with a heavy heart that I say that I completely disagree with the Post characterization of what we're trying to do in the area of consumer protection. In fact, building a consumer protection fund is not a novel concept. States like Ohio, West Virginia, Arizona, Florida, Missouri, New Jersey, Utah, and Washington State have similar funds. What my proposal was an attempt, frankly, to save the city money. I didn't want to go hat in hand to the council for more money to establish a consumer protection unit. What I proposed was a novel idea for the city, but not for other states, and that is, look, give us some of the money that we're able to bring in when we successfully prosecute wrongdoers in the area of consumer protection. Nothing more, nothing less. And as to building the Office of Attorney General, I think we have a very good office now. My goal, Kojo and Tom, in 4 years, we're going to go from good to great. And we're going to need the council's help in order to give us the tools that we need to get to that place where the citizens of the District of Columbia know that the chief law enforcer in DC always has their back.
Yep. Was building this office, just to be clear on something we talked about earlier. The council, it used to be that the Attorney General had attorneys general in every agency, every significant agency at the city. And that attorney, just like in the chief financial officer's office, those CFOs report to the CFO. But under the change in the law, the attorneys general in each of the different agencies actually report to the director of those agencies. And you've also asked that the authority over those various attorneys general be brought back under the Attorney General office. Why?
Well, let me be clear. I campaigned on the view that those attorney general who were taken out of the Office of Attorney General to go out to the agencies should come back. I have actually not proposed legislation asking the council to reverse the decision they made 6 months ago. I'm willing to work with the status quo right now. I do think the best practice is to have those attorney general come back at some point. But again, in an attempt to work with what we have and be moderate, not aggressive, I've determined that I can work with the mayor's office of legal counsel, Mark Toohey, in making sure that those attorney general out in those agencies are applying one law and are actually doing their jobs consistent with that law and are being independent in doing
This
so.
is another check and balance that you're trying to recreate.
That's exactly right. That's
Okay.
exactly right.
You support the initiative the district recently implemented that legalized the consumption of marijuana in the nation's capital, but this week you announced an all-out effort against synthetic drugs that often serve as substitutes for pot. What are you aiming to do?
What we're aiming to do, and Mr. Sherwood over here to my right has been absolutely following these issues from day one. Quite simply, Kojo, we're trying to remove Schedule I drugs that have a dramatic negative impact immediately on the brains of our juveniles off of public aisles. Kids walk up into some of these gas station stores and other convenience stores. They look at these packages that are quite colorful, sometimes have pets and other attractive designs on them, and they think that, they're cool if they can consume some of this stuff. In reality, these kids consume those drugs and they go into periods of psychotic behavior that's dangerous. That's why we're seeking to shut down those businesses who will sell those type of items to kids.
And those drugs are already illegal. Will you be pushing for raids on businesses that are selling synthetic drugs like that, like the raids that were conducted during the Vincent Gray administration?
Well, we're working very closely with the chief, Chief Lanier, and her staff on exactly what the approach should be. Our approach will be aggressive. We do recognize, however, that there are owners who are leasing properties who may not exactly know what's going on with their lessors. So the long and short of it is we want to give people an opportunity to get right by the law. And if they don't take advantage of that, we're going to enforce the law.
I did a story this week on the Petworth community, and you spoke there last night or Wednesday night?
Yes, Wednesday night.
Wednesday night. It's a neighborhood. Some would call it gentrifying. Some would say that it's improving. There are people who've lived there 20 to 60 years, families. One of the Chico Bowie, who I spoke to in my story, says he and his wife have daughters. They live just a few blocks from a park that's a few blocks from one of these convenience stores. They say they can't use the park because people sit there and smoke and consume the drugs. And they would like something even more aggressive to stop the public consumption, stop the sales. What more do you need in terms of authority rather than going to court or DCRA to get their licenses removed? Because there's something you can do faster that would help relieve the pressure on these communities. One of the stores we went to, incidentally, on Wednesday, we went back to it and it was locked up.
There you go.
And your office didn't do that. Apparently, they just decided to close.
Well, and that's that's the effect of deterrence. Strong enforcement deters crime. And when people see that the Office of Attorney General with the police department are no longer playing games when it comes to synthetic drugs, they're going to move their businesses out of the District of Columbia. In terms of additional resources, certainly we could use more lawyers. We could use greater subpoena power. And frankly, we could use stronger financial penalties. And those are three areas that we'll be seeking legislation from the council on.
Another area where you disagree with the mayor is on the budget autonomy lawsuit moving through the federal court system. The mayor says that because she and the council no longer or don't disagree on the issue, unlike the previous mayor and the council, that the issue should be moot. You say the case, which is about DC's ability to spend its locally raised dollars without congressional interference, should proceed. Why?
I say it should proceed, Kojo, and I get there very reluctantly. And as you know, I'm informed by the judicial decision of Emmett Sullivan, a federal district judge in D.C., native Washingtonian. The fact of the matter is, sadly, I have to say, as I said publicly,
Sound less like the judge.
and the judge was certainly regretful, as he had to follow the law as I do. That the theory of the case, unfortunately, does not have the better of the law. I can't wait till we can move beyond this issue. The Court of Appeals will make its decision, I think, soon. And then we can all get back on the same page and focus on voting rights and autonomy and go about it in both a political way and legal way that can withstand the scrutiny of courts.
You got the final question, as always.
Well, we've talked about contract review authority, which the mayor would like to take away. We've talked about the assignment of attorneys general, which were taken away by the council. We've talked about budget autonomy. Are there any other major issues with the mayor that I haven't heard about?
Well, I think the mayor is doing a good job.
Oh, I don't know. Don't be all.
Don't go there.
Don't be. You've been polite enough about that.
Well, what I'd like to talk about, frankly, are some of the initiatives that the Office of Attorney General is focused on.
But your time's up.
Go.
Juvenile justice. Bill, there is no more indiscriminate shackling in the Superior Court when juveniles appear in court.
Councilmember David Grosso helped do that, right?
Grosso was instrumental, and I got to tell you something. Again, I think the newspaper got it wrong here. Kenyon McDuffie's leadership and calm, mature guidance on an issue that became an emotional issue was not properly noted in our main newspaper. Mr. McDuffie deserves immense credit for bringing disparate parties together in short time and effectuating change when, frankly, there was no hope on the horizon. We're going to also work with Mr. McDuffie when it comes to identifying creative programs to get our kids out of the criminal justice system, focusing on kids, not only those who are non-serious offenders, but also working with the police chief and focusing on folks who are repeat offenders. You're going to see in the coming weeks significant proposals, initiatives designed to turn our criminal justice system as regards juveniles around.
Carl Racine is the Attorney General for the District of Columbia. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a reporter for NBC4 and a columnist for the current newspapers. Tom Sherwood.
Can I just say one thing about our
Yes.
guest before you go to the next issue?
Yes.
I think the scope of what we just discussed suggests it's going to be a significant battle over how the city's governed. The council's going to be involved. And how this new elected attorney general is going to either function or just be a sideshow to city government.
And you'll be there to cover it all, won't you?
We'll see how it plays out. I look forward to talking to Mayor Bowser about the issues.
See, now you're going to make him say something
Now,
else.
why don't you take your
Bring in
headphones
our
off?
next guest, please. But go ahead, Carl.
I just had to put on my headphones on that comment by Tom, which I agree with. And all I would add to this is sometimes you hear the views of editorial boards. That's important. Go and listen to the people. And if you listen to real people, no matter where they live, all 8 wards, they will tell you that they want an independent attorney general to be a check and balance on government.
This is a conversation that clearly needs to take
I know he
place.
said all 8 wards, which is the mayor's slogan, but this is one of the fears is that he will become a force against her. But here we go.
Speaking of all 8 wards, in the 8th ward of the city, it looks like if several of the candidates are a little bit concerned because of the support that the mayor's favorite in that race, LaRuby May, is getting. 2 of those candidates announced that they're dropping out to endorse a 3rd candidate, Trayon White. The 2 who dropped out were Stuart Anderson and Johar Abraham. And it looks like another candidate, Marion C. Barry Jr., Marion Christopher Barry, there's this feeling that the mayor is trying to force feed a candidate, but the fact is that candidate has already won a straw poll and has raised more money than anybody else.
Well, it's clear that the mayor's people are supporting LaRuby May in the Ward 8 race to replace Marion Barry in the April 28th election. But to attempt to discuss the 13 candidates for that seat and the machinations that are occurring as some are maybe dropping out, I meant to check the Board of Elections, see if in fact they've dropped out or just said they would, but their names are on the ballot regardless. I just want to caution people we are into almost what I would call the silly season. Usually the last couple of weeks of any political campaign, I haven't yet gotten the phone call that someone's taking my signs down. I haven't gotten the call that something improper has happened. I think we've already had some suggestion of a Russian influence. I don't even know what the hell that means, but I just think we're just going to have to.
No leaks of politics.
I'm going out of the country in order to prepare for this election, so I'll be in Cuba. But I just think we have to see a lot of machinations. But the question here is, it's a special election. You have to get your voters to the poll. It's not just a general thing where people will go vote. You have to get your supporters to the election. It's like the firehouse primary. You have to get them there to vote.
Speaking of firehouse primaries, that's one of the topics we'll be discussing with our next guest, Martin Noe. He is the chairman of the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority. He's a member of the Prince William Board of County Supervisors. Martin Noe joins us in studio. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Coach, and thank you, Tom, for having me today.
Did you like my little transition from
I love
firehouse?
that. I love that.
I used to be a professional reporter.
It's often in Virginia, as a matter of it's often said that transportation is the third rail of Virginia politics. Every jurisdiction in the northern end of the Commonwealth is pushing for a piece of that more than $300 million pie made available by the state's new transportation law. The Northern Virginia Transportation Authority will make decisions about this round of funding later in the month. First, for those who are not familiar with the authority, who's on it and what specific powers are assigned to it?
So the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority was created back in 2002 at a time when there was hope that a statewide or a region-wide referendum would provide some new sales tax funding for transportation in Northern Virginia. That referendum failed, but the authority continued to operate as a planning organization. And then we were sort of here to be able to be responsible for the new funding that was approved by the General Assembly back in 2013. And for the most part, we're a 17-member interjurisdictional body made up primarily of local elected officials, one representative from each county and city in Northern Virginia, plus some representatives of the governor's office and the General Assembly as well.
That said, what kinds of projects is the Transportation Authority considering, and what's the measuring stick you're using to determine who gets or what's worth the money?
That really gets to sort of the challenges that we're up against. Part of the problem is we receive about $300 million a year in funding for every year. 30%
From
of
state funds?
Well, they're actually regional funds. There's
Okay.
a regional sales tax and some other sort of taxes that are specific to Northern Virginia. And 100% of those funds must stay in Northern Virginia, which is why we control it rather than the money being sent to Richmond. And those regional funds, $300 million is a number that sounds really big until you realize how many things you need to spend it on. We have literally billions upon billions of dollars worth of problems we need to address. And we're required under the law to look at an empirical data-based analysis of which projects do the most to relieve congestion. And in a way, identifying projects that relieve congestion is in a way easy because there are so many projects that could meet that standard. But so then choosing the ones that not only can make a difference for commuters, but that also can be done fairly quickly is the more difficult challenge. And we work with the Virginia Department of Transportation to develop a numerical rating system to determine how much congestion each project relieves, and then couple that with other data points such as cost effectiveness, ability to connect communities, public safety components. To
Politics in there anywhere?
The idea is to take the politics out of it. The reality is you have a room full of politicians. So there's going to be some level of politics. Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a fair question.
Okay. Well, let's talk about some of the big projects. Corey Stewart, this is Prince William, it said the Bi-County Parkway, is that dead?
That's been interesting. The Bi-County Parkway is.
Or is that outside your jurisdiction?
It's outside of our jurisdiction.
Unbelievable.
What's okay though.
It's in Northern Virginia.
In Northern Virginia. But the catch is this, going back to this point, we are only allowed to fund those projects that have been through this empirical analysis.
Oh, okay.
And VDOT has not yet done the analysis on Bi-County. Our organization wouldn't take a position on it, or certainly wouldn't fund it until VDOT can demonstrate that it is in fact a, in quotation marks, regionally significant congestion relieving project.
You did a major debrief this week with Dr. Gridlock in
Yes.
the Post, and my eyes were just watering from all the projects that you're having to discuss. And you said you can't. Your principal goal is to relieve congestion,
Right.
But everyone says, of course, if you build a new road, then people come. That's always true, except for the inter-county connector in Montgomery County, which people have yet to find, or it costs too much. I'm not sure which, but it does seem to me that you're fighting a losing battle in Northern Virginia. That you're going to have congestion almost no matter what you do.
Well, and I think that's a legitimate point. Is that what I like to say about this is that it's really going to be impossible to evaluate our success in terms of this congestion relief factor by looking at any 1 year or any 2 years. The real question is going to be 10 years from now, will we be able to look back and say, here's what we made better?
When you have 300,000 plus more people in Northern Virginia
right.
alone.
The region is growing incredibly rapidly. Hopefully that'll mean that the tax revenues will grow with the population and allow us to do more and more each subsequent year. But we've been given a huge undertaking. What's the old phrase? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Right. And we're taking these initial bites right now.
Our guest is Martin Noe. He is the chairman of the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority. If you have questions or comments for him, call us at 800-433-8850. Send email to kojowamu.org or take a look at him on our website, watching our live video stream at kojoshow.org. He's a member of the Prince William Board of County Supervisors. Martin Noe is a Republican. How do you define what has regional interest and what doesn't? There are people in Fairfax, from what I understand, who feel like the county didn't fare well in the original list for the proposed funding, and that Fairfax is the Commonwealth's biggest county, a place with a lot of connective tissue with the rest of the region.
Right. We have a set of evaluation criteria that we use to determine whether it meets the standard of regional significance. And the code requires that we address that question, but the state law is a little vague about what regionally significant means. What we're looking for are those projects that try to move people between activity centers, get people not just around town, but get people across the region. Now, that may mean a project that crosses jurisdictional lines. More often than not, it may be a facility that exists only within one jurisdiction, but has an impact on traffic problems everywhere. I think something that Northern Virginians understand and folks from outside don't fully get is, in the evening, a car accident on Route 1 in Woodbridge can create traffic jams in the city of Alexandria. And so it's facilities that have that interconnectedness that are going to tend to get the most of our attention. Sometimes those can be very small projects. Sometimes those can be intersection improvements. But if it's an intersection of two major corridors, then it can do a lot to reduce gridlock in an isolated area. It has a ripple effect throughout the region.
Has the new Silver Line of Metro, did it take 4 cars off the roads? I mean, is there any quantifiable impact of the Silver Line yet that you've seen?
We have, we don't do that level of analysis. I do think we are beginning to see sort of the impact of the Silver Line on 66. There's a lot more that needs to be done to Metro, though, in order to expand that capacity. One of the projects that we're investing in heavily at the NVTA is the traction power upgrades for the orange and blue lines. And
traction power upgrades.
Bet you didn't know that before.
That's
what makes public service so exciting.
Yes, exactly. And it's a perfect example of one of those things that no one has heard of it, right, generally until I show up at their town hall meeting. What it is the infrastructure upgrade specifically to the electrical system that will ultimately lead to the expansion of cars on the orange and blue line, going from 6-car trains to 8-car trains. Probably the single biggest investment and most important investment we can make in transit in the region, but it's going to take years to implement because you have to updo the infrastructure, then you have to buy the cars, then you have to get the slots and the stations. And
are you involved in the Potomac Yard Metro stop?
We are actually. In fact, one of the big projects.
In our lifetime, would that be done?
Well, I'll put it this way: we are allocating $1.5 million for planning for it this year, acknowledging that it's a $287 million project. So we're putting the next piece of the funding to it. It's a major. It has the potential to be an extremely important congestion reliever, and of course, also have some big impacts on Alexandria.
Understand, we're not saying in your lifetime. We're saying in Tom and my lifetime, which is a completely different matter.
Now, most people who live in Maryland don't really care about Virginia traffic problems and vice versa, as you probably know, except when it comes to things like the Beltway and the American Legion Bridge. Is there any anticipation that I don't think you can expand the American Legion Bridge anymore. What about a river crossing from Maryland to Virginia? Is that the business community in Northern Virginia has talked about it forever?
It's something that I think a lot of people are very interested
in. Where is it it's not even in the plan.
It's not even
planned to plan it yet?
Yeah, we're sort of, that's the catch. We're required every 5 years to update our regional plan. And our current, what we call Transaction 2030 plan, which it should be Transaction 2040 plan, does contain a reference to it, but doesn't contain any sort of routing. I'm not sure when we do the update starting next year that we'll have that routing in there. One of the problems we have as the authority is that we are required to do this sort of mega plan for the region, but we're only allowed to work on projects that are inside Northern Virginia. So anything that requires an assent from Maryland becomes very difficult for us to work on. I think we need to make some more political gains between the states. We see the same thing on Metro, frankly, is that, here we have a new Mayor Bowser here in DC, a new governor in Maryland. And I think we need to now, as Northern Virginians and really for the entire Commonwealth, reevaluate what those shared goals are with these new administrations.
From region to more local, in the final analysis, you are elected to office by voters in Prince William counties. What are your priorities for Prince William in this whole process?
Well, I'll say my single biggest priority is Route 28 is become the single source of gridlock in Northern Virginia, single biggest source of gridlock. There's other corridors, Route 1, for example, Route 7, where we've made some investments and things have gotten a little better. Route 28 has become the big problem. We're doing a groundbreaking on May 11th for some new widenings along 28 up near Dulles Airport, up near the Innovation Center, future Innovation Center metro station. But we really need to start putting some major investments in the southerly section between the city of Manassas and I-66. That's a corridor that has been ignored for the last 30 years, frankly. This year, for the first time, there's some new money coming from the NVTA going to that project. It's just planning money right now. The problem we've got is there are half a dozen different possible solutions involving bypasses, road widenings, reversible lanes. We don't know which ones will work because there's been no analysis to figure out how to pay for it. The hope is to put some money into it this year for planning so that in the next year or two, we can start putting some serious right-of-way and construction money.
And I think Robert Thompson, the Dr. Gridlock for the Post, was talking about 28 and some construction doesn't seem to be slowing up on 28.
28, yeah, it's a little bit like that cathedral in Spain.
Right.
You know, they finished building it, and then they had to go back and rebuild it. I think the same thing's going on. 28. 28 is the road that no matter where you live, it's the road you have to get on for Dulles Airport, which is now the single biggest job driver in the region.
It's 7 days a week congestion.
And in both directions.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, people southbound in the morning and northbound at night.
In I-66, the expansion of I-66 outside the Beltways had fall under into your...
We are not planning. That's a VDOT project.
VDOT.
But we are probably at some point going to be part of the funding for that. And what I've been saying to VDOT is that right now they've got a big plan. They've got this very long corridor they want to make major changes to. And what I've said is, identify for us the specific pieces of that we can take on. I would like, for example, to say, let the NVTA take on upgrading the Route 28 I-66 interchange. Let us do that work. You all work on the pieces in between. We still have to work out those arrangements. But I mean, 66 it's a VDOT project, but it's something where we as local governments absolutely have to have skin in the game.
On to the specific politics of Prince William. You're up for re-election this year, but it looks like you're going to run against your Republican challenger in what's known as a firehouse primary, not in a traditional primary. What kind of nominating process would you prefer, and how will the court decision saying that they can have the firehouse primary inform your campaign strategy?
Well, I don't think it changed my campaign. Just to give a little context, we had an unusual situation happen. There was an administrative error. Our local party chair missed a filing deadline. It was honest human error, but it led to the sequence of events that had myself and some other incumbent Republicans actually in the circuit court asking for judicial relief so that we could have a primary, a regular primary, as people are accustomed to in June, where you go to your local polls and vote. The final decision was that the judge said that the state and local boards of elections do have the power to fix the problem, but that he didn't have the power to mandate that they do so. So our party had to fall back and schedule one of these firehouse primaries. So in Prince William County, there'll be one voting location in each magisterial district, and that election is going to happen 45 days early. It's actually 15 days from now on April 25th. We are having a countywide election for the Board of Supervisors chair, the Coles District Supervisor, myself, a few of the other races, our sheriff, our clerk of court. We'll be running in this party-run primary process and putting a tremendous amount of energy in the last few weeks and in the next few weeks into just educating people on how to vote. You tell people there's an election, they want to go to the elementary school around the corner and show their ID at 7 in the morning. And instead, it's going to be from 10 to 5 on a Saturday at one location for the entire district.
And that's where the non-incumbents often seem to have an advantage, because they show up at those primaries with large groups of supporters and are able, in some cases, to upset incumbents.
Yeah, obviously, we're working really hard, and we take every election very seriously. What I will say is this, is that I think there would have been some worry if there had been a convention situation, where it's one of these all-day commitments. This firehouse is very similar to a regular primary. The setting is different, but you come in, you show your ID, you vote, you go home. So as long as people know when and where to be there, they'll hopefully show up in large numbers.
It's not an all-day thing.
So Prince William County, I was looking at the growth. It's kind of like mirrors somewhat like Loudoun County. And
Very
20,
similar.
30 years ago, it was virtually nothing
Yeah.
farmland, and now it's 450,000
Right.
people, and you're growing. The diversity is pretty good. I was looking at the stats, it's like 65% white, but it's 20% Latino and
Right.
10% Asian or something close to that, 8% Asian. It's really quite a changing place, and 20% African American, I believe.
Prince William County
It's
is actually
quite urban.
Yeah, the 2010 census says that Prince William County is now the first large jurisdiction in Virginia to be a majority minority community, and it is a dramatic change. If you look back 30 years ago, we were a heavily rural community, very disproportionately Caucasian, and now we live in a community where our schools have to educate children whose home, their mother tongue, their parents' language is like in 20 plus different languages, or probably more than that.
Is it a job creator at Prince William? Are most of the people in the Prince William working in Prince William? What that figure
We're
is?
still a commuting community. The numbers are down a little bit, but still certainly more than half, probably more like 60% of folks with jobs who live in the county go someplace else to work. That number is changing. Actually, when we just got our last bond rating upgrade, we were affirmed as a AAA jurisdiction. One of the bond rating agencies actually made the point that Prince William's done a particularly good job in our economic development of attracting firms that don't specifically rely on the federal government for their revenues, that we're bringing in technology firms and education and healthcare.
The
Which
reason
could be local companies.
The reason I brought this up is because your candidate forum is at the Dar El Noor Islamic Center.
That's right. That's right.
Which is interesting. A lot of
The
people not.
candidates debated a mosque.
Yeah, pretty
And I'm
good.
afraid we're
And you
out
have to
of
take your
time.
shoes off to go inside.
That's
It's
right.
very
Wearing
cool.
socks.
Martin Noe is the chairman of the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority. He's a member of the Prince William Board of County Supervisors. He's a Republican. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Kojo. Thank you, Tom.
Tom Sherwood, in the 20 seconds or so left, you can list the items that you'll be bringing me back as gifts from Cuba.
I am bringing me back, as I said at the outset of this program.
And I'm afraid that's all the time we
best
have.
possible
Tom
rum.
Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a reporter for NBC4 and a columnist for the current newspapers. Thank you all for listening. I'm Kojo Nnamdi. Coming up Monday on the Kojo Nnamdi Show, DC's charter schools at a crossroads. 2 decades into the district's experiment with publicly funded, privately run schools, we explore how charter schools are tackling enrollment, special needs kids, and location challenges. Then what a Brontosaurus is back.